Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is part two of an overview of a computer and DOS game collection that went together from the same owner, all of it from back in the day, from a kind gentleman on Reddit. So, part two. In part one, an earlier video, I talked about the computer and gave kind of an overview of it. I forgot to mention explicitly, but I have been able to get it to run. I have played some games on it, and in future videos, I'll certainly be demonstrating that, so you guys can follow along and check that out. Really, what is cool to me about this computer and the floppies is that this is literally a full collection from back in the day. This is exactly what someone played on the machine. This is how many of us, right? How many of us had our own box of floppies and our own original PC back in circa 1992 or 1995 or something like that, and then how many of us actually have that now in 2025, right? I mean, a lot of the times you'd maybe lose discs or discard them, or you'd donate your computer or recycle it because it was 10 or 20 years old and you weren't using it anymore and it was just taking up space in the basement. And it was only later that you came to realize, hey, it would be neat to revisit that from a nostalgia perspective or a time capsule perspective. So really, in this day and age, in the year 2025, now that we're well over 3 decades from when this machine was current, it's just incredible to me, and I get a huge kick out of the fact that, again, I have this computer that the gentleman from Reddit used, as well as what seems to be perhaps most of his original software collection. So I've already talked about the computer. Let's go dive into some of the software. So what we have here is a pretty interesting collection. You have some retail games, which I'm going to go through like one by each, so you can see what titles this guy played. You also have kind of utilities in here. These are the installation discs for the Media Vision Jazz 16. Actually, I think it's called the Deluxe 16 sound card that is inside the computer. This stuff that there's more discs under this paper here. There's countless, like probably over 100, AOL, Juno, CompuServe, like trial edition floppy disks, Norton antivirus things, just kind of utilities, which are interesting, but not quite as interesting as knowing kind of what games people played on it. And then over here to the side are kind of what I'd call like personal discs. So discs that the gentleman or his friends made with their own computers, either giving each other copies of games or copies of like MIDI files or homework or something like that. So I have perused some of these, and the labels are illustrative as well as far as what's on them, and some of those are interesting as well. So we'll take a look at those as well, and hopefully this doesn't take hopefully this isn't like an hour-long video as I go one by one, but I thought it'd just be really interesting to show the people who are interested, what were people playing in the early 90s? What did people play? These days, if you run a DOS machine like me, you probably go on archive.org or some abandonware sites and download copies of old games you remember and things like that. But this is literally what someone was playing in the 90s. This is literally what someone picked up over the years with their own money or as gifts from your parents or something like that. And I think even though this isn't my personal collection, just kind of the mix of things that you might have gotten or you might have owned at the time, that there's it's interesting to explore that. So let me see if I can set up the phone to be like on a tripod or held up at least by something, so I can use two hands to go through this collection. Maybe I can balance it here on this mug. Bear with me for just a second. All right, I think it's going to be most interesting if we start with looking at the actual retail games that were probably bought at a game shop and came with, like a big cardboard box or something like that. So first up, we've got Quest for Glory 3: Wages of War by Sierra. A number of discs related to that. Hopefully all of them. We've also got King's Quest 5 by Sierra. Another a well-known, well-regarded game. Ultima Underworld: The Stygian Abyss, a 3D world unlike any other with incredible graphics and many other nuances that are unique to this game. That sounds interesting. I've heard the name but not personally played it before. Let's move on to the next pile. You've got Might and Magic: Dark Side of Zine by New World Computing Inc. Another one I haven't played, but I'm very well acquainted with the Might and Magic series and know that this is also a very well regarded game. Multiple installation discs for that game. Hopefully they all work. We're going to be testing that out in future videos. Wizardry: Crusaders of the Dark Savant, 1992 by Circa Software. That sounds like another kind of RPG style game. Here we have Cannon Fodder, a disc that probably came with a PC Gamer magazine. Cannon Fodder, people probably are well acquainted with that. It was a very popular game at the time. This is the Mutanoid Word Challenge. I can't say I'm familiar with this game. It looks like the labels are maybe falling off the discs. Interestingly, I was going through these discs earlier, and the labels suggest that there are 4 discs, and we have 3 discs here with a rubber band. So hopefully the 4th disc is somewhere in the big box of discs, and we can locate that. Moving on to the next pile. We've got Quarantine. That's a great game where I think you play as like a cab driver in the future, and it was an early violent video game. I think you could run over pedestrians and things like that. Here we have Lemmings, probably the original Lemmings, a very popular game at the time. Another disc for Lemmings. This looks like it is Lemmings 2. So Lemmings 2. I believe there was even Lemmings 3, although I think it was called like Lemmings the Tribes or something like that. Those were all quite popular back in the day, and I spent many an hour playing them myself. Here we have Vinyl Goddess from Mars, which is a platform game. I've heard it said before that it originally started out as a sequel to Gel of the Jungle by Epic Mega Games, but Tim Sweeney, who created Gel of the Jungle, was not fond of how the game was turning out. So the team that was working on, what was to be Gel of the Jungle 2, took out the references to Gel of the Jungle and released it themselves as Vinyl Goddess from Mars. So that's a great, well-known shareware game. Here we have Home Casino Spectacular by Virgin Games Inc. Not totally sure what game this is. I don't think I've played it myself, but it sounds like it's a casino or gambling style game, and that's kind of interesting. Those were always popular, and I'd see them advertised in mail order magazines and things frequently. Probably maybe more of interest to adults at the time than kids, but several more discs to go through. So let's see what's next. Master of Orion by Microprose. Another game that I know is very popular, or was very popular at the time, and was kind of a major game. I have not played it myself, so it'll be interesting to try that out on this machine. In addition, you've got Master of Magic by Microprose. Another game that I've heard the name of many a time, and know it was very popular at the time, but have never actually played it myself. So that'll be another good game to try out. Here we have, I guess, Goblins, but it's spelled kind of with like a Roman numeral 3 in the title. Also by Sierra. I think one of those good, well-known and popular early Sierra DOS games, circa like 1992. Indianapolis 500, The Simulation from 1989, Papyrus Design Group. I actually had this game back in the day in the early 90s, and I loved it. It was kind of groundbreaking for IBM PCs for having, real-time 3D polygon graphics. They were untextured in 1989, but surprisingly, even on something like a 386, the frame rate was very good and it was very playable, and that seemed pretty groundbreaking at the time, that you had this relatively smooth polygon Indianapolis car simulation. So very good game, and that'll be good to revisit on this machine if the disc works. We have even more discs to look at, so let's go look at them. The next pack, Hoyle Book of Games Volume 3 by Sierra. Can't say I'm familiar with this. I think I've heard of like Hoyle Casino before. Maybe this is like a casino or card game kind of game. But it's by Sierra, so it must be well known and probably was very popular and a bestseller back at the time. So that'll be interesting to check out. Then you have Westwood production of Lands of Lore, The Throne of Chaos. I've definitely heard of the Lands of Lore series. You get the sense that the gentleman who was buying these games and was using this computer back in the day, you get the sense that he was very much an aficionado of RPGs, Western style RPGs. Sierra Lost in Time, LITCD patch files. Not totally sure what that game is, but it's by Sierra, so it must be well known and great. Here's a disc that says Quest Maker. Create your own graphics and text adventures using PCX file format images, an excellent game authoring tool. I'm not familiar with this, but judging from the artwork on it with dragons and things, it kind of sounds like you could maybe make some sort of branching textual RPG with pictures or something of that nature. So that'll be interesting to check out. And by the way, I'm sure all of these popular games by Sierra and the like are already on places like archive.org, but for some of the stuff I've never heard of before, like this Quest Maker, I'll check and see if that stuff's on archive.org, and if it's not, maybe I can upload it there so this stuff can be preserved, assuming the discs work. Which, by the way, I've tested some of these discs, and the ones that I tested did tend to work. So I'm cautiously optimistic that most of these are going to work. Here we have Expert Chess by the company Expert Software. I think you often saw stuff from Expert Software by the cash register at software stores. Like you could buy CD-ROMs and things like that did not come in big cardboard boxes. So Expert Chess for Windows, circa 1994. Sounds like a decent chess game of the time. And by the way, for this machine, just based on the specs and also seeing kind of the discs that are included in the disc collection, we're talking about Windows 3.1 and not Windows 95. This computer would have been, unfortunately, very much underpowered for running Windows 95, especially with its 4 megabytes of RAM. All right, on to more stuff. We have Sim Tower by Maxis. I think most people know what that is. It's a strategy game, kind of like SimCity, but you built kind of a building, Sim Tower. Ultimate World Empire. Conquer the world in this excellent strategy game. I think I might have played this back in the day. If it's what I'm thinking of, it might have been like a Windows 3.1 game. I think it's the kind of thing my brother was more into than I was. I can't say a lot about it. Um, Here you have Gore Galore by Jester Software. This sounds very promising. You are Bloody Bob, an escaped homicidal maniac. You satisfy your sickest fantasies in a splatterfest of blood and gore. Run amok. They are after you. I think that sounds extremely promising, and we'll definitely have to check that out. I did Google this when I saw the captivating disc label here to see what the heck it is, and it actually seems to be a game that was it's a first-person shooter game that I think was made with what was called the Pie in the Sky development system, or Pi 3D for short. Generally, the games I played that were made with that game engine were somewhat poor and kind of amateur productions, and I think this probably fits that as well. But these days, through the lens of nostalgia and seeing kind of the culture of the time and stuff, it's interesting to revisit and explore some of this stuff. Gore Galore, disc 2 of 2. They did not include the fancy label with like dripping blood on both discs, only on disc 1. Here's Overkill, Battle Meteor Storms, Hideous Creatures, and Alien Ships. So this is like a shareware version of Overkill by Epic Mega Games, which is a fantastic top-down spaceship shooter along the lines of like Raiden or something like that. And that's a personal favorite game of mine. I owned it back in the day. Um, Ancient's Death Watch. Not familiar with this one. It looks like it's from 1993, Crystal Vision Software, unless that is just the shareware distributor. It will be interesting to see what that is. Another shareware disc, Plague of the Moon. Defend yourself against unyielding evil as you avenge the death of a close one. Mix potions, cast spells, and more. You really get the sense that this fits in with many of the other discs we've seen that are like Western style RPGs or medieval, Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. So really cool stuff, and hopefully this is an interesting game, and hopefully the disc works. Here we have Brutal Battle. I played this back in the day. So here's the description. A fast action fighting game in the tradition of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2. Cool sound, hot music, digitized actors, and special moves. I do have the misfortune of having played this back in the day, and it is a terrible game. It is indeed a two-dimensional fighter like Mortal Kombat, complete with blood and digitized actors, but the quality of the animation is poor, the resolution is poor. It's not a smooth, well-developed game like Mortal Kombat. It's a much more amateurish effort. But through the lens of nostalgia and checking this stuff out, of course you got to try this out, and of course we're going to try to install this on the computer and play it, and it's going to be awesome as its own thing. Here you have Cross. Go into the mini levels of and retrieve the crown. It doesn't mention it on the disc label here, but I think the Cross series was maybe made or published by Apogee Software, which was a very well-known software publishing company of the time for shareware. So this is going to be something good. And you have Quest for Glory 1. So You Want to Be a Hero by Sierra. So another title I've heard of before but haven't actually played. So a lot of Sierra discs in this collection, and those are known to be very high quality and very popular games of the time. So this bodes well for having an interesting experience with the PC. Some more discs here. Let's see. Elder Scrolls Arena by Bethesda, another kind of like RPG-like game. All of those discs go to Elder Scrolls Arena. Looks like it's a whopping 8 discs large, so a pretty large and substantial quality game for the time. Here we've got TIE Fighter on a couple of discs. Everyone knows what TIE Fighter is, the Star Wars game where you fly a TIE Fighter. Here we've got Echo Quest, search for Satis, another Sierra game. I think this is another kind of well-regarded title by Sierra. And here's another Sierra game, The Castle of Dr. Brain, Disc 1. And okay, good. I do have Disc 2 over here as well. So hopefully those are the only two discs needed, and hopefully we'll be able to install Castle of Dr. Brain at some point. Yet more discs. Sierra Conquests of the Longbow. I think that's what that says. Several installed discs. Again, kind of not that familiar with this one, but I assume it's probably a Western style RPG along the lines of like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. What else do we have over here? Any more games? Yeah, various discs over here for utilities and screensavers. I guess I'll skip those. So we've looked at all of the retail official kind of retail games or official shareware games. So what's left that's interesting? Yeah, I'm going to skip the utilities and Windows disks and Norton antivirus disks and AOL disks. So let's check out some of the personal disks that that the gentleman made. That several of these also have games and also kind of flesh out what was the DOS gaming experience of the day, where you'd share a copy of Doom or Duke Nukem or something with your friends on a floppy disk. So this is further illustrative of what was played on this machine at the time. So speaking of shareware, you've got Doom, and there's several disks here. It says Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom 3, Doom 4, Doom 5. Considering there's so many disks here, perhaps this is actually the full version of Doom. We'll have to see, assuming that these disks work. There's also a separate disk with a different type of disk that looks like it was made at a different time that says Doom 2. There's only one disk here. I believe Doom 2, like the actual game Doom 2, came on multiple disks. So not totally sure what this is. Maybe it's, one of the disks that's necessary for a bootleg copy of Doom 2, or maybe it's Doom 1, Disc 2, and it's like a duplicate copy, but we'll have to see. Icon here, I don't know what that is. Let's see what else is interesting. So this is CV2. I don't know, maybe that's like a resume, a CV, or maybe that's like Civilization 2. You have a disk here, it says Duke Nukem, but then over it says Wizardry 7 Editor. So this must be an editor or trainer for the game Wizardry 7. You have a disk here that says Master of Magic, ? I can't provide the answer to what this is, but perhaps it's the game Master of Magic, which I've heard of before. MOM.exe, I have no idea if that's a game. eMagic MOM editor. Maybe MOM. Maybe that's Master of Magic. I think that was one of the games we were looking at earlier in the retail discs. So perhaps these are editors or trainers for that game. After Dark, I think that's like a screensaver. I think for Windows, if I'm remembering correctly. Okay, this disc just mentioned it's like picture files. Here's a disc that says games. I was curious as to what potential games might be on the disc, so I already popped that one in and checked it out. And it looks like it might be a copy of the games that were included in things like Microsoft Entertainment Packs. So stuff like Minesweeper and Ski Free and Fuji Golf, kind of those well-known early Windows 3.1 games that everyone liked to play at the time. So I have copies of those on other discs, but it's interesting to have this homemade copy of it, which shows that, like most of us, the gentleman using this computer had a good, decent selection of Windows 3.1 games. Another disc related to After Dark, XCOM editor. So I guess the gentleman played the game XCOM, a great strategy game, and here's some sort of editor related to it. A disc that says D-Derby 2, perhaps that's Destruction Derby. I know at least the first Destruction Derby game came out for DOS, Perhaps this is disc 2 of it. I know there was a sequel to Destruction Derby. I'm not sure if there was a PC version of that, and in any event, it probably need more than one disc, but maybe it's related to that. Either way, though, I guess I would say those were like later 90s games that really needed like a Pentium processor to run. So I don't think any of the Destruction Derby games, either of them, whoops, would run on this 486 machine at all. Um, and then you have World Trophy Soccer. Not familiar with that, but seems like it would be a soccer game. More of the personal discs. This says pool, so maybe it's like a billiards game, just a speculation. Here's chess. I don't know what chess game that would be, but clearly it's a chess game. Here's more Destruction Derby, D Derby. So D Derby 1, D Derby 4, D Derby 5, D Derby 4, Happy Skull World. These, clearly the Destruction Derby stuff was probably used with a different computer. This disc says puzzle on it. Maybe there's a puzzle game on it. We'll have to check. More of the personal discs. Unless I grabbed too many of them here. This one says Pink Floyd. I popped it in to see if there might be like a Pink Floyd MIDI file or something on it, but there wasn't. I didn't see any Pink Floyd content on it. I believe there was, interestingly, like a text-based RPG game. Like you'd click the application and it would show up and it would be like, it would have text and be like, you're facing west and you want to go here and what is your next move? And you'd type in a move. So it was like an interesting text-based RPG, I think, was on here, as well as maybe some homework or something like that. This is really interesting. I checked this out already. So this disc says Stunts on it, and perhaps you've heard of the game from, I think it's 1991, Stunts, published by Broderbund. I think it was made by Recreational Software Design, RSD. It's a great early 3D driving game, stunt driving game with loops and jumps and things like that. And what really gave it a lot of longevity was that you could build your own stunt tracks in the game with the included stunt track editor. And like you could literally save, hundreds of them in your directory. There was no real limit. I owned this game back in the day. I actually still have my copy from back in the day. And my brother and I, we literally played this for the entire 90s, like from 1992 until like into the early 2000s. It was just something we always had on our computers, and we always made tracks for it here and there. We literally have like over 100 tracks that we made, and I feel very fortunate I was able to grab those childhood tracks that my brother and I made off of some old hard drives and floppy disks earlier last year after not really thinking or caring about them for like 20 years. So cool stuff. So I was very interested to see what was on this disc, if it was just a regular copy of Stunts or if there might be some custom tracks on it. And what's fun is that there were some custom tracks saved on here, I think by the gentleman who owned the computer, or maybe his friends, or maybe, some of each. And because this is just a floppy disk, there weren't a lot of them on there, but there were maybe like 10 custom tracks, some of which seemed really interesting and very fulsome with lots of stunts and things like that. So I have backed up those files onto my hard drive. I did send those files back to the original owner in case he wants to drop them into Stunts and play them with DOSBox or something like that. And I have also shared those Stunts tracks with the Stunts community to the extent it still exists on the Stunts gaming forum, where I believe you need to be registered to download. But if there's interest, and please mention here in the comments if you are interested. But I can upload these tracks to something like archive.org if you would like to check them out as well. Here's a disc that says Lander on it. I checked that out, and that is the game Lunar Lander for Windows 3.1, which is a recreation of the arcade classic game. That's a great game that I had back in the day. A good Windows game. This has no label on it. Who knows what it is? This says StarCon, so it's probably like Star Control 1 or Star Control 2. Either of those would probably work on this machine. It's most likely not Star Control 3, since I believe that was a CD-ROM game, and you'd need a lot more than one disc for that, and So who knows what it is. Um, a disc that says Tetris. I don't know exactly which version of Tetris this is, but presumably some sort of Tetris for DOS. Here's a disc that says Nesticle, and if you're in the know, you would know that Nesticle was the name of one of the earliest Nintendo Entertainment System emulators for PCs back in the 90s. It was for DOS and was one of the earliest NES emulators that allowed you to run Nintendo ROMs on your like DOS PC if it was sufficiently powerful. I don't know if this 486 machine is powerful enough to have a fun time with that, but it should be interesting to check at some point in the future. Let's see, something related to clip art. I guess this used to be Alone in the Dark, disc 4 of 4. I haven't come across any other discs for Alone in the Dark, but it looks like that's been scratched out and replaced with a game that some may argue is even better. The handwritten name here is Scorched Earth. And if you know anything about DOS games, you've probably heard of Scorched Earth, and you probably think it's pretty great, because it is. Here's, I guess, a copy of Lemmings. Um, Certainly a lot of Lemmings discs in this collection. And something that says Mim Maker, so probably some DOS memory management thing. So I think that's every disc that I would really regard as interesting for this computer. Like I said, there's more discs in the box, but they're along the lines of like Norton Antivirus and AOL trial discs and things of that nature. Just all kinds of stuff that you would have gotten in the mail or for free as promotions or something like that, which in the modern day don't would not be that interesting to play around with. But at the very least, we have some very interesting games here, both official kind of retail discs that were purchased, as well as personal discs that give you a flavor of the time as far as what kind of games were people sharing with each other circa early 90s and whatnot. So altogether, I was talking to the gentleman whose PC this is, and saying kind of how remarkable it is to have this very fulsome collection still around in 2025 and not junked or discarded over the years. And it came to mind that this computer, it certainly has no modem in it, and it would have been pretty early to be using this computer with the internet, circa 92 or 93. Um, it seems very unlikely that the gentleman was downloading games to this computer back in the day. So really, the only way to get software on it was, of course, through these floppy disks as well as the CDs he might have had at the time. So, you know, if I spend some time and I install all of these games onto this computer really kind of turns into the best version of it that it ever was back in the day. I mean, back in the day, I had a 30 megabyte hard drive or so you could only load a handful of games on. But these days, with the modern kind of compact flash media replacement for the hard drive, I've been able to shoehorn in here. That's like a 2 gigabyte storage. That's equivalent to a 2 gigabyte hard drive. So, I'm sure every last one of these disks, to the extent that they still work and I'm able to install from them, the files from them could easily fit on the hard drive. And then we'd have the computer with, you know, as far as we know, essentially most of the games that were ever used on it back in the day. And that just gives me kind of the warm fuzzies that trying to restore something back to an original state or have something be kind of a flavor of the times. And I think it's going to be really interesting and really fun to install this stuff and check it out and have this PC literally be its own kind of personal time capsule for the personal collection that this gentleman had at the time. And furthermore, that's going to help differentiate it from my own kind of DOS machine that I have going on over here. I have a fun Gateway 2000 Pentium machine, and I've loaded it up with various childhood favorites of mine and other games that I wanted to try back in the day. many of which did not include the various RPGs and strategy games and various titles that are in the discs here. So it's going to be interesting further from that perspective to have this computer be differentiated and not just a clone of what I already have with like the Gateway 2000 system. So the Gateway 2000 system, that can be basically kind of my personal childhood, in a computer, whereas this is going to be, someone else's, the Reddit gentleman's childhood in a computer, and I'm very happy to kind of make that happen. And should he want it back in the future for nostalgia purposes, I'd certainly entertain that. So anyway, this was an overview of the discs and the software. In future videos, I'll spend a stupid amount of time trying to install stuff from these discs to see how much of it can be installed. In any event, worst case scenario, if many of these discs do not work, just the fact that we know what titles they were, could enable me to track down essentially the same games from websites and download them and put them on the hard drive. And either way, this computer, I'd like to try and build it back to what it was, or what it could have been at the time. And I think that's going to be a really interesting process. So stay tuned for future videos on that, as well as playing and demonstrating some of these games, many of which are going to be new experiences for me because I didn't personally play them back in the day. So stay tuned. Interesting stuff. Amazing DOS game. Totally authentic, real collection. This is real history here, and I don't know if anyone else cares about this stuff as much as I do, but DOS machine, original discs that were used with it. Lots of interesting games and software to play with. I don't think it gets better than that for a DOS gaming hobbyist like myself. So stay tuned for more interesting stuff to come.